Kia ora tātou, nau mai, haere mai. Warm welcome to everybody to our October meeting of Rangitāne on Manawatū Committee for Wednesday the 18th of October 2023. And special welcome to my co-chair, Wiremu, and councillors here and also other members of the committee and other council members as well. I'll just go to ask you, Wiremu, if you'd like to open, please, with karakia.
But you're still making that mistake of being 3 minutes late. But Rangitāne will forgive you for that. Inoi tātou, let us bow our heads in prayer. He tō mātou māti te rangi, kia taputo ingoa, kia tā mātou rangatiritanga, kia metea tō e pai ai ki rungo tu whenua. Ki re te ano ki tō te rangi, ho mai ki mātou i nā nei. He tarama mātou mua tēnei rā, mura mātou hara. Me mātou hoki muru nei, i o te hoi ana ki mātou. Au hoki mātou e kāwea, ki wanga wānga, engari, ako ranga mātou i te kino, no hoki te rangatiritanga me te kaha me te kōrea. Ake, amen. Tēnā koe, Mr. Mayor, good to see you back. Whananga from Rangitāne, kia ora. Ngā iwi ngā hau e whā, to the non-Māoris, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Kia ora or bonjour, thank you, Wiremu. And committee members, we've got our order of business, quite a bit to get through today, and I find that really encouraging because this meeting has had its challenges at times in terms of agenda items, so it's really encouraging that we have a good agenda today. So just for members of the public, just the housekeeping and safety procedures. Unlike the event of an emergency, we just evacuate to the assembly area next to the clock tower, to Maraahine in the square. Health and safety wise, it's a non-smoking facility. Unlike the event of needing a defibrillator, that is located in the foyer entrance on the ground floor. Our toilets are in the link span as you came in, and any incidences, please report them to our committee administration. So we'll go to number 2 on our order paper, which is around, I'm just having a look at that, where's that come from? Okay, just trying to read it. So we have,
Mr. Mayor, apologies.
Okay, apologies. And we have, do we have an apology of lateness or perhaps early departure from you, Councillor?
Potentially, if I could have it noted, early departure, it would be around 3 o'clock if we're continuing.
Great. All right.
Date.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll look to move that. Seconded by my co-chair. Thank you. Wiremu. And are there any comments to that? If not, I'll ask you to vote, please. It'll come up on your screens. And that's passed, 8 votes for, none against, thank you. Number 3, notification of additional items. I don't have any. Declarations of interest. Again, I haven't been notified of any, if there's anything from the floor. There being none. Moving through to number 5, which is around public comment. Again, I haven't received any. And we'll come through to our first number 6, which is our first presentation, and invite Rangitāne on Manawatū, the Environmental Management Plan, and we've got Anna and Siobhan along with you, Danielle. Over to you.
Kia ora, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors and Rangitāne o Manawatū committee members. It's a pleasure to be here today with Siobhan and Alana to present our plan. Aroha mai for those that have already received it at Rangi Mārie. The purpose of this plan is to enhance our ability to be actively engaged and meaningfully influence developments that are occurring within our rohe. It is not, however, a default for councils, contractors, government, developers, consultants, or applicants to not engage with us. This plan is a key framework that all councils, government, developers, and resource consent applicants will use as part of their planning tools, and it represents 450 plus years of kaitiakitanga in our rohe. We expect the plan to be used as a framework to understand our role as treaty partners and tangata whenua, our values, objectives in relation to our people and environment, our views on land use and freshwater management, and that our views are not just restricted to cultural matters. To ensure statutory responsibilities are honoured by local and central government, and to inform and guide constructive and meaningful engagement, processes and discussions, decisions related to consent, designation and concession applications, statutory and non-statutory plan development, and council operations and development in our rohe. The status of the plan reflects Rangitāne or Manawatū's cultural and traditional relationship with our ancestral lands, waters, wahi tapu and other taonga that must be recognised and provided for under the Resource Management Act. The plan has statutory influence under sections 61, 66 and 74 of the Resource Management Act. Thus, this plan must be taken into account by councils when preparing a regional policy statement, plan or district plan. Key introductory aspects of the plan: it sets out our whakapapa connections to our rohe, it sets out our mātauranga worldview, which inter alia is that all elements are interrelated. The environment has a significant whakapapa. The elements descend from io mātua te kore, the nothingness, ranginui and papatuanuku. Thus, Rangitāne or Manawatū are descendants of the environment. It reinforces our deep spiritual and physical connection to that environment, and that ROM has an infinite responsibility to protect the metaphysical and physical environment. It acknowledges our six hapu. It sets out our historical account, acknowledgements and apologies by the Crown in Rangitāne or Manawatū's treaty settlement. Just in terms of the apology, that recognised Rangitāne or Manawatū's struggles in pursuit of our justice, that the Crown deeply apologised for not honouring Te Treaty or Waitangi, that the Crown apologised for leaving Rangitāne or Manawatū landless and failed to protect our interest when acquiring lands for settlement, that the Crown apologised for the generational impacts on Rangitāne or Manawatū, and it apologised about our inability to then exercise our customary rights and responsibilities. It included the Crown's failure to acknowledge the mana and rangatiratanga of Rangitāne or Manawatū, and that the Crown sought to atone for its wrongs and begin the process of healing. The plan covers Rangitāne or Manawatū's rohe, which is defined by the Rangitike River upstream to Orangi Pango Trig, east to Te Hekinga Trig, following the summit along the Ruahine Ranges, southwest to Tararua Trig, across to the mouth of the Manawatū Awa. It also includes Ko Te Waiwai Kapari or Tararua ko Rangitāne. At this point in time, I will pause and Siobhan will take us through the Te Mana o Te Wai statement and concepts.
Kia ora. My name is Siobhan Karatiana and I am a technical advisor for Rangitāne o Manawatū. I was provided guidance and support in developing Te Mana o Te Wai for Rangitāne. The concept of Te Mana o Te Wai has been around in legislation since around 2014, and over the interim years it's grown in strength as each national policy statement for freshwater management has been released. In 2020, the latest version of the National Policy Statement put Te Mana o Te Wai at the heart and soul of freshwater decision making. It signalled a step change in the way that freshwater was managed and land and its impacts on freshwater, and provided the opportunity for Rangitāne o Manawatū to detail what Te Mana o Te Wai means in the local context. We went through a process of analysing all information and statements that Rangitāne o Manawatū have put out over the past decades through their treaty settlement process, through cultural impact assessments, through verbal statements. So a significant analysis was done to map out everything that was important to the iwi. The statement itself puts Māori at the heart of what Te Mana o Te Wai means in the local context. Te Mana o Te Wai has a number of aspects to it, such as managing water as a holistic whole. It sets out a set of principles in the National Policy Statement, kaitiakitanga, manaakitanga and mana whakahaere. So we looked at those principles and took what that meant in the local context and set out a statement for Rangitāne. So the statement applies to the Manawatū Catchment Freshwater Management Unit. It covers the awa itself, coastal lakes, their catchment, tributaries and connections, including groundwater, wetlands and lagoons. And as I mentioned before, the most significant quality for Te Mana o Te Wai flowing through the Wai is Māori. Māori is carried through all of these tributaries, groundwater, wetlands and lagoons, and it binds the metaphysical and physical, traditional and spiritual, nurturing properties and upholds all life, including that of people and Rangitāne. As part of the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management, an objective is required to be added into regional council plans. It's required to be taken account, like Danielle mentioned, in district planning for housing and stormwater, wastewater, three waters management. So we have three objectives that came out as being really, really important. The first one being protecting and restoring the Māori of the awa, coastal lagoons, tributaries, so that they can again physically, traditionally and spiritually sustain the iwi. I'll just pause there and wait for the PowerPoint presentation to pop back up. So we're looking to bring these characteristics of Te Mana o Te Wai into all decision making that the iwi is involved with. The quality and quantity of water must be sufficient to support all species present in that place: plants, birds, insects, molluscs, koda and fish, and tuna. It wouldn't be acceptable to just see a minor improvement in these ecosystems. They need to be healthy, abundant and thriving. The rivers and streams need sufficient room on their floodplains to express their natural character, including the ability to change course and connect with wetlands. And the water bodies must have natural rhythm, morphology, hydrology and character. The mahinga kai species and freshwater resources must be healthy, resilient, abundant and safe to harvest and eat. While we have a long journey to go to achieving these aspirations, they are also principles that we apply to decision making that on the ground. These are real, tangible things that shape the way that we approach development in the city, three waters management. Secondly, recognising and providing for the relationship of Rangitāne with their waters is equally important. It embodies Te Mana o Te Wai and the principles of mana whakahaere. So Rangitāne must be enabled to undertake their kaitiakitanga in decision-making, management, restoration and monitoring at all the levels of freshwater management. They must be able to meaningfully exercise their mana whakahaere. including being able to carry out their cultural practices and tikanga tuku iho and shared with the community for passing on for future generations. The mātauranga of Rangitāne must be recognised, developed and be provided for, transmission provided for. The iwi know what this looks like and how to do that. They must be supported to be able to enable these things in developments. Oh, I'm having a little bit of trouble with the presentation again. Thirdly, recognising that water is an interconnected whole by ensuring that both ephemeral and permanent water bodies are provided for, from the smallest creeks, puna and wetlands to the largest lakes, groundwater bodies, and rivers and coastal waters. This is a change in worldview and a change in the way that we've traditionally managed water. When providing for the social, economic and cultural well-being, the way that water is taken and disposed of needs to be integrated. No longer can we separate out and put a box around different parts of water management. It must be integrated. In the National Policy Statement also sets out a hierarchy of obligations. Rangitāne or Manawatū have interpreted this hierarchy and applied their own lens to it as well. The principles are there, but the local expression is enhanced. So firstly, the health and well-being of water bodies and freshwater ecosystems is maintained, but equally of first priority is the ability of tangata whenua to uphold these. Secondly, the health and well-being of people interacting with water through ingestion, for washing and cleaning and essential purposes must be prioritised next. And finally, after we have provided for these things, the ability of people and communities to provide for their social, economic and cultural well-being now into the future can be met. Through a Māori worldview, we know that once the water is provided for in the first instance, these things follow. This is what that framework captures and protects and upholds. It is Rangitāne who can define what Te Mana o Te Wai means for the local region and provide leadership in this space. Now pass over to my colleague to talk about the other aspect of the iwi management plan.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Elena Nuku, Manager Te Aotearoa Environmental Centre. The Whānau Water Framework identifies aspirations to improve lives and to build capacity to achieve goals. Rather than being a deficit-based framework, it focuses on the aspirational space with 7 outcomes linked to the framework which can be applied to the management of our environment and resources. I'll just go through a couple of examples of collaboration with Palmerston North City Council on these outcomes. Hauoranga is the physical and spiritual health of whānau, as well as looking at the developmental recreational areas. We've been working closely with PNCC park planners, Youth Space and Water Safety New Zealand to investigate and improve the safety of our awa for recreational users. Ko tahitanga is whānau participation in society. We've collaborated with PNCC to workshop iwi Māori housing aspirations to inform district planning, long-term planning and housing policy following PNCC recognition to define Māori aspirations for housing in the future development strategy. Pāporitanga, cohesive collaboration. So a relationship has been established with Civil Defence Emergency Management Team. Rangitāne or Manawatū are invited to participate in the Manawatū Wanganui flooding event exercise to facilitate an understanding of roles, responsibilities and capabilities. And finally, Tiaki Taiao. Our role is kaitiaki for Te Taiao. We developed a cultural health monitoring index which is recognised by PNCC and applied to waterways throughout the city. We're also notified as part of the spill response, so should any contaminants enter the waterways, it enables us to deploy our team as part of the response to work alongside the Council for cultural and environmental restoration and enhancement.
So as we move to the conclusion, this is a living document and it will grow and develop and respond to different legislation. It's important to note that whānau ora and Te Manawatū Wai is an immense untapped potential to guide the way we all use and manage resources for our future generations. The whānau ora lens is best for everyone as it's based around community, whānau, people and resources that are at its heart. As I said, it's a living document and will continue to develop. And you, our council and Te Treaty partner, have a real responsibility to contribute to being partners in its implementation. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Ka pai, and thank you, Danielle, Alana and Siobhan. It was, that's my second version of that. I got the first version at the marae, so thank you very much. I'll open it up for any questions now. No questions. I find that interesting. Oh, well, I'll start with one. Siobhan, probably your part, where you spoke about flood allowing the awa to naturally go into flood plains and everything. How do we get on there with that in the city? I can understand that in the more rural aspect, but because of the city, we'd find ourselves under threat, really, as a city. So are we talking about certain parts of the awa?
I don't think we're talking about going back to before the city existed by any means. It's impractical. It's about a framework that shapes our decision making as we move forward. We've got a lot of work to do to, like I said, achieve the aspirations. The work is intergenerational and we won't achieve it in all of our lifetime. But it should shape the way that we make decisions going forward. So we shouldn't continue to build our infrastructure immediately next to the river for many reasons. We are at risk of flooding in this environment where our city's on a floodplain. What other projects can we move the stop banks back to give the river more room in other spaces? We won't be building a new stop bank immediately next to the river. We know that that wouldn't meet Te Manawatū Wai. So it's about forward-looking, not going back to 200 years.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you all for the presentation. I guess at least one question on my mind would be, to your point, Danielle, around council having responsibility. I guess how you see that being scoped and planned from here?
I think David's...
Sorry, I'll probably have to jump out to get...
So I think David's going to talk to some of that in his report, but that is really the next step for us to work with council officers around how we actually are going to implement and monitor and measure performance against it.
All right. Okay, that's the questions done. So thank you, Alana. Thank you, Siobhan, for your presentation, and of course you, Danielle, as well. So we've got the recommendation there to the committee that the Rangitāne on Manawatū committee receive presentation for information to move that. Seconded by, thank you, Wiremu. Are there any comments? There being none, we will vote, please. And that is passed, 10 votes for, none against. Thank you. All right, moving through to confirmation number 7 on our order paper, which is around the confirmation of minutes from our previous April 2023 meeting. So we have minutes of the Rangitāne o Manawatū Committee meeting of 26th of April 2023, Part 1, public, be confirmed as a true and correct record. I'm happy to move those, seconded by Councillor Dennison, thank you. Any matters arising from those minutes? They're on page 9 of your papers. There being none, we will vote. And it's passed 10 votes for, none against, thank you. All right, we move through to, in response really to what we've just heard around the Rangitāne o Manawatū Environmental Management Plan, I invite officers up. Page 13 of your papers, councillors and members. So David and Todd, invite you up to speak to that.
Tēnei te tuake. Te whakamiha tu te tautoko i nā mihi whakatau kia koutou Rangitāne o Manawatū, te haukaina. Kei roto nei te whare. I whakatakoto i nā kōrero. I whakatakoto i nā kōrero o tēnei o nā kaupapa pehe kataia i te whakamaramake ko tōna nui, ko tōna hohonu, ko tōna kiko. Mā tōna nui pēr, e kore taia o mātau nei kai kaunihere te whakahoke i nā kōrero. Te whakamaramahia i nā taimahatanga me ngā tāhua me ngā waritana kei roto i enei kupu. Ka honu atu ki te wā i whakae ai me ki te kawanate i wainganui a koutou me te karauna. Ai kōrero tia nei i a koe a te rangatira tāniau. Nei rai tahi o nāhua. Nāhua nuira wātu. Kei roto i enei kōrero he mahere, he ara mātātau. Nō reira tēnā koutou e runga i te whakaiti ki whakamaramihi mai, ki whakatakotohia mai tēnei hei whakaro ake, hei wānanga ke whai ai tātou he huarahi mō koutou mō tātou. Mō tātou tamariki mō ka puna kei te haramai. Nō reira, te iwi kāinga koutou, a koe rangatira tēnā koutou. E tautoko nā mihi ki a koe te rangatira Wiramu. Nau rā, i te wahana me ki whakawairua tō tātou hui, kia whakatūwherehia te wahana kōrero, tēnā koe te matua. Koutou katoa, tai atu kia koutou i whakawaha nei ai nā kōrero roto nei, kia koe Daniel, Alana, Siobhan hoki, koutou i whakamaramihia mai nā ta kōrero, kia maramihia ki te katoa me pehia rā te nuku whakamua. Ahui anō, i a koe rangatira, e te kaunihera, te kahika grant koutou mā nā kai kaunihera tēnā tātou katoa. So just a brief acknowledgement of Rangitāne, and we're extremely humbled by this document, these words, and what they mean. I'm just going to take a seat. Kia haere tonu nei aku kōrero. Kia rongono pai hoki nā mea kei runga i te ipurangi. From a officer perspective, when we were first shared this document, I think we were overwhelmed with what Rangitāne had leaderfully and generously provided. As explained very clearly this afternoon, not only does it establish and clarify very clearly a set of principles and intent and context around this pathway, and provide for our staff and our community a very clear spatial context, cultural context, relational and spiritual context. But then it goes on to provide in a in a language that is clearly intended to not only provide a very specific, very clear, very purposeful articulation of Rangitāne values and aspirations, but in a way that our staff and community and elected members can clearly receive, and then further takes us along towards what those long-term aspirations are, but also what it looks like, what the pathway might look like, what the expectations are, but also there's an assessment framework there, which again provides a huge amount of clarity in terms of how we need to elevate our work and performance and the way we work alongside the hau kāinga Rangitāne, and a clear sense of, as this partnership evolves, where we might be headed towards. So very challenging to articulate that in words. Certainly my emotional expression is probably represents better an aspect that humbly I think as an organisation it will take us a little while to share with our own organisation and to really understand in the various aspects of the work we do with you what it means. One huge amount of work that our Chief Executive, Wade, and our lead in people and performance have set us is to ensure that our staff are really well informed as to what the partnership and the partnership agreement is, and importantly how it actually works. And this document provides a lot of clarity to our staff, and we will develop with you some frameworks, some training, so that our staff can confidently continue to work alongside Rangitāne o Manawatū and our other partners. And we can identify those common goals as well as the tensions and things we still need to resolve. So koe rā e tahi kōrero hei whakatuwhera i a mau ko David i tēnei wā. I will pass on to David now to probably respond a little bit more in terms of our report. There's a lot of technical elements which I'm sure David will articulate much more clearly than I will. But I think it's important to represent how significant this moment is and this document is. So, he me nui kia koutou katoa. It aligns very well with our relationships to date, but I think it will provide us a lot of clarity going forwards. Nō reira, e nā nei ka hoatu te rākau ki a koe, David, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou mō tēnei wā.
Kia ora koutou, ko David Murphy tuku ingoa. I'm Chief Planning Officer here at PNCC. Just acknowledge Mr Mayor and your Deputy Chair or Co-Chair, Atua Wiremu, for the opportunity to present the report today. Just mihi to Todd for the opening words, and mihi to Danielle, Siobhan and Alana for the presentation this afternoon. It's further aided my understanding of the Environmental Management Plan. Thank you. I guess just first and foremost too, I just congratulate Rangitāne o Manawatū on the Environmental Management Plan. If I can briefly speak on behalf of officers across the council that work with Rangitāne, we've all learnt a lot in recent times, particularly post-settlement. We've all thoroughly enjoyed working and learning and growing the partnership. And I think the Environmental Management Plan is another step on that partnership journey and will further aid officers' understanding of your aspirations, which is just fantastic. In terms of some of the detail, the Environmental Management Plan does trigger some specific statutory obligations on behalf by the council, and for that reason we commissioned some specific advice which is attached to the report. What I would say, I think, is if the partnership is healthy, which it is, and we're working together, my personal professional view is we shouldn't need to look at the law. The partnership will know there's a sixth sense there if things are going well or they aren't, and we should understand and have our radars up when we need to pick up the phone or arrange a hui or but we have covered off what the law requires of us. I think there are obligations just beyond the statutory land use planning obligations too. So in terms of council's broader planning and policy making, and that's covered off in the report. We have, prior to formally receiving this management plan, we have a number of existing systems and processes in place, and while we're confident that those are robust, we don't get it always right, and there's always room for continuous improvement, and I think this plan is another opportunity for that. As an example, I've just been talking with the planning team in recent weeks as we were sort of preparing the response to this and considering it. And one thing is we come to Rangitāne and we brief cultural impact assessments for new developments and proposals. And now we'd be expecting that the environmental management plan is part of those briefs. And I guess just to reiterate, I guess the point that Danielle made as well is for officers and other agencies and developers and consent applicants, we don't see the plan as officers read it, interpret it, and then tick box. It's a trigger for a kōrero or a hui to better understand what it means for particular projects. As we heard, whānau ora outcomes are a big part of the plan, and that's something as an organisation I think we need to reflect hard on. I know at the strategic planning unit, we've recently committed to some staff attending the Te Tihi training opportunities for whānau ora, and again, that's something I think that we will need to think about for elected members and officers moving forward. So, other than that, I take the report as read and happy to answer any questions, but again, just I guess to support Todd's words, just appreciate receiving the plan and look forward to continuing our partnership and having this there to continue to aid our work. So, kia ora.
Councillor Isabella.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Ngā mihi koroa. E roa mā whātai. Firstly, notwithstanding events over the weekend, I'm just interested in the tension between Three Waters entities and their obligations to give regard to plans such as these. Should that responsibility move from council to a different entity, does that obligation carry over to a new entity to give regard or consideration to this plan?
I guess regardless of what happens in the coming months and years with respect to Three Waters, whoever's responsible for developing and managing water assets will be required to obtain planning approvals, consents for that work. So the way the system works is Te Manawatū waia should be reflected in our planning documents, which then means applicants, whether that's council, whether that's a CCO, whether that's a Three Waters entity, will be expected to ensure that that's at the front and centre of their applications.
Excellent, thank you. So
and I would just add to that the other element for us to consider, which is within your question, is what's our responsibility as a council to continue to advocate for our partners' values and its recognition and representation within what will be very different bodies and dynamics. So just another aspect to be considered, I think, particularly at the councillor table. Kia ora.
thank you. And just similarly on that note, with regards to the Natural Built Environment Act and Regional Spatial Planning Act, in the legal advice that came through that obligation has not necessarily carried from the RMA, is not carried through to the new acts. And I'm wondering, is that obligation captured in a higher planning instrument, a higher like regional policy statement, or is it captured through in the new system at all?
Yeah. Look, the NBA and the SPA are very new. I don't confess to be an expert in the detail just yet, but certainly looking at the legal advice, my interpretation of what it was saying was the explicit connection between sort of the iwi management plan and resource consents might not be as strong, but there's still an obligation in terms of developing regional spatial plans, and then the regional natural and built environment plans to take into account iwi management plans or environmental management plans. So I think that's been consistent with a number of policy signals we've seen from government in the last decade, where the more we can elevate that input to a policy level, then it should filter through into consent processes. But there will always be consents that pop up that people didn't anticipate in policies, and I think there's still a backstop or a process there that those can, a notified consent, significant consents, applicants should be engaging with Rangitāne to understand what the environmental management plan means for their applications.
Brilliant. That's really helpful. Thank you. So just summarising that, pretty much whichever way reform goes, we can still have a role in advocating for our partners and for their plan in whatever format that looks like. Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Just looking at the next steps on page 17 of our paper, right down the bottom, it talks about the REMP will inform the review of direction setting documents such as the long-term plan, and that's included also in the third recommendation. I'm just interested to understand, with something like the long-term plan that we're already sort of in the process of, start beginning to implement for the 24-34 long-term plan, do you feel confident that we've got the principles and intent in place already in the process that we have underway, or do you think that there might be some significant changes to how that might look? And if so, what sort of changes, and is that able to be embedded partway through the process, or would that have to be something we embed next time we do it, or can we embed it at this time?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think see our partners will have a view on that as much as what we do as officers on behalf of council. But we've had Rangitāne involved in all the workshops along the way on the LTP, and had some email correspondence from Danielle just the other day about where they were expecting to see some focus in some key areas, particularly around stormwater, which was coming through strongly in the work we've been doing on the future development strategy, which will sit alongside the LTP. So in that sense, I think there's been a good level of engagement in the early parts of the LTP. But that sentence on page 17 and the corresponding recommendation also talks about the supporting strategies, plans, policies and bylaws that spin out of the LTP. So while we do a significant amount of our strategic planning as part of the LTP process, there is always, as you'll be aware, bylaws, plan changes, policies that are developed during that 3-year cycle. So and certainly the environmental management plan will be, as alluded to in the report, be front and centre of those processes.
And I'll just add, the relationship settings allow us to humbly to receive, and as I said, this is a very significant document, but we don't tend to, in the relationship, sort of have a particularly reactive or jump around or get something comes in and then everyone internally has to figure out what does this mean and how does it work. I think there's a relationship, particularly at the leadership level, elected member, our senior managers and with our staff, where there's been foreshadowing of this document arriving. There's been a lot of work internally and workshopping, especially around resource consent space, where the clock is ticking really fast, and that's something which we know councils have struggled with. It's such a tense space at a council level, and it also puts a lot of time pressure on iwi as well. So a lot of internal work has occurred before this moment, and what it means is, while there is a lot to consider, I think we appreciate there's some priorities in terms of what needs to be or could be implemented relatively quickly with our current settings. There will definitely be some heavier, more weighty aspects that will probably have to come to council at some point to with integrity, put some of these aspects in place or to be considered. But I think it's a measure of the maturity and the work that's gone in from iwi leadership and council leadership that we can receive this and we can recognise that there is a huge requirement here, but that we can do it. We've done some amazing things together as a community, as a council, with our partners, and I think there's an excitement in this. There's an aspiration of there's some great opportunities here, and we've got the staff and the leadership to do it. But there will be some challenges, but we can front up to that. We can deal with it. So it's great to be challenged as you know, from an internal perspective, to see if we can perform up there with some of those councils that are at the real cutting edge. So we again appreciate the challenge that Rangitāne has provided. It'll keep us engaged very fully for quite a while. So kia ora. Kia ora.
Thanks. Before I come to you, Councillor Barrett, so David, are we not already using some of these principles in this plan already in some of the work that we do?
Yes, without a doubt. And as I said in my sort of opening comments, I think this aids and adds to our understanding and partnership. So, you know, there are plenty of examples where we're, you know, and, you know, the work we've done at Kakatangiata is just one example with particularly the whānau ora approach informing the master planning, structure planning out there. So that's, I think this is a further progression, but it's informing our current work, yes.
Okay, so playing the devil's advocate for a developer out there that was perhaps a bit concerned that there may be some sort of takeover or plan, we're continuing the journey that we're already on?
Yes, but certainly the environmental management plan also signals where there's some areas of improvement. So the environmental management plan includes an assessment for each of the councils and the rohi about how they're performing, and there's some signals there to where which are covered in the report about where we might need to lift our game a little bit. So while we are doing a lot of good work, which is coming out of the partnership. And we can point to a whole range of projects where these types of outcomes are being included. There's like everything, there's continuous improvement as part of this as well.
And although it's named environmental plan, we are talking something a little bit bigger, aren't we? I mean, Todd alluded to bigger decisions that are coming. Is this more of an all-encompassing sort of whānau ora plan? Is that?
Yeah, that's certainly what I heard from Danielle and what I have seen in the environmental management plan. And you look at the whānau ora outcomes that, you know, they are across the four wellbeings. That, I mean, the interesting thing with the resource management space is the definition of environment includes the four wellbeings. Yeah, it's definitely a multi-outcome plan.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, you know, recognising that it is Rangitāne o Manawatū's plan, can I understand from a council perspective how we're placed to contribute to tracking progress against that plan? Both in terms of for visibility back to Rangitāne, but also visibility through to council?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, and look, I think when we had a conversation just last week as part of the LTP about how we are going to best monitor our performance across the four wellbeings, and we're doing some further work on that with the intent of bringing a report back to council as part of the LTP about you know, a breadth of indicators. But I would sort of see it being a little bit of both, where we're monitoring our overall performance against a range of objectives, including this plan. But equally, we heard from Danielle that it's and Siobhan and Alana earlier, sorry, about that it's a live document. It will be updated, and I anticipate that assessment within the plan, while I can't speak obviously for Rangitāne, I would anticipate that if it is a live document, that assessment from Rangitāne about how the city's performing will continue to be updated and reported to us.
Thank you. So in terms of is there any specific plans at this point around time frame when this might next come to this committee or to council as a whole for updating, or is it just kind of on demand?
I think at this stage, it's been this is the first iteration of the plan we've received, and I think as officers I think this should be viewed as the initial high level response, but I anticipate through those existing channels and forums that the report talks about, such as the Whiri Kōkō, that we'll continue to have kōrero and hui about how what joint implementation looks like.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. No further questions? Great. Thank you. Thanks, Todd. Thanks, David. All right. Recommendations on the screen there, members. We have to council that the council hold the Rangitāne o Manawatū Environmental Management Plan as a council record under the RMA. And number 2, that council use the Rangitāne o Manawatū Environmental Management Plan to inform future planning and decision making as directed by the Act, the Spatial Plan Act, and also Natural and Built Environment Act. That council use the Rangitāne o Manawatū Environmental Management Plan to inform the review of direction setting documents such as the LTP and council supporting strategies, plans, policies, bylaws, master plans and frameworks. I'm happy to move that, seconded by my colleague, Wiramu. Up for any comments. Councillor Isabellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to comment that reading and absorbing the contents of this plan has been a real high point this week as I've been contemplating the no vote in Australia. To me, this plan presents a very clear and cohesive whole of picture pathway to optimising, not just restoring, but optimising our local natural environment and creating and fostering that ecological stability and resilience that, as I keep harping on about, is our best first line of defence against the impacts of unpredictable and severe extreme weather. Particularly, want to commend the use of very direct terminology, which I think is very effective. It's something I've advocated for us to take a similar approach in our long-term plan. Particularly things like calling pollution for what it is really important, because if you're talking emissions, that's abstract and out of sight, but if you're talking air pollution, that puts the focus right where it should be, which is breathing toxic air into your lungs. If you're talking runoff, that could be anything. If you're talking water pollution, as this plan does, that puts the focus right where it should be, which is on unswimmable rivers and toxic aquatic environments, boil notices for drinking water. That's what that terminology we associate with, and that's where the focus should be. And this plan does that, very effective use of that terminology, and I think we can and should learn from that. Also, reflecting on that no vote in Australia, I think this is what they've said no to, is what can be gained from strong partnerships is an integrated perspective of the health and well-being of the population and the environment that sustains it, in a very well thought out, strong direction of actionable steps that can be scaled as necessary or opportunity provides. And all of us from a city can benefit from the individual and cumulative effects of the steps in that plan. And I'd certainly like to see that we recognise it and make more full, appropriate use of this plan, rather than just the legislative bare minimum requirements of keeping records and factoring it in a bit. When we do big work, we can be more than passive partners there. And I think we are, and we should keep going with that. So I just want to thank Rangitāne for lodging this plan with us and congratulate you for setting the bar high where it needs to be. I'm in full agreement with the contents of the plan, and I look forward to any opportunities that come up to engage with it and the actions that set out. So thank you, ngā mihi nui, moto mahi rawa nui. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Barrett. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Reading through this, I found it to be a particularly vivid and relevant example of Mātauranga Māori, and something that is incredibly valuable for us locally. And I think a reminder that Mātauranga Māori is in part the past, but it's also the present and the future, and really heartened by what we've seen here And I think, acknowledging that council is on a journey and a positive partnership journey with Rangitāne, this plan in particular represents quite a significant step up and quite a significant opportunity that I hope we can look back on in a few years' time and see how it is paying dividends for both sides of the partnership in terms of taking the city forward. Thank you.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to make a highlight point really around that it's not lost on me the fact of the whānau ora framework that's promoted within this document around one of the bullet points of measure around council promoting innovative pathways into home ownership for Māori. I think this is an holistic approach, not just on the natural environment and the way we interact with riverways and the flora and fauna, but actually getting outcomes for the holistic well-being of Māori. So just wanted to highlight that point, Mr. Mayor, it's not lost.
And finally, Deputy Mayor.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair, to the co-chairs, o te rā kia tātou. I support everything that's been said by my fellow councillors. I wanted to say that I felt that this plan is an absolute taonga. And the iwi have spent considerable time, effort, working on this and documenting it for all to see, which is one thing, having a Māori worldview. It's another thing to document it in a shape and form that everyone can understand and pick things out from. As Councillor Dennison had mentioned, it's a plan, and Councillor Zeppelin, this is a holistic framework and plan that is sufficiently, from my mind, sufficiently agile enough to respond to changing needs. Nō reira, tēnā koutou i ngā whanaunga. Kia ora.
All right, thank you, members. So we've got the three recommendations there. I'll ask you to vote, please. That's passed 10 votes for, none against. Thank you. All right, we move through to item 9 on our agenda, which is Te Matua Poutoa Development Plan and the Progress Upgrade. So I'll invite Kathy David Todd, who's our Parks Manager, to come down, along with Steve Bramley, who's the Project Director from SGL, and Murali Bhaskar from Boone Architects, and Hugh Tennant from Tennant Brown Architects. Okay, we're just doing the techo thing, so have a moment to reflect. All right. Excellent. We have connection, or Houston, we are operational. Thank you. Look, if I could just welcome Kathy, Steve, Murali, and Hugh, and the floor is yours, Kathy.
Thank you. Before I introduce the report, I'll take the opportunity for Murali to introduce the consultant panel.
Korihi te manu, tino awatea. Ka ao, ka awatea. Ti hei, mauri ora. E te wenua, te tūranga o te iwi, tēnā koe. Te marae o hine ki waho, tēnā koe. Nā mana whenua o Rangitāne iwi, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. E te rangatira mā ki konei, o te kaunihira o Papa Oia, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Ko tēnei te mihi ki a koe, Kathy, mō tō tautoko I tēnei kaupapa o te motu o Poutoa. Matua Wiramu, tēnā koe, nā mihi ki a koe, mō tō haututanga I ngā wā katoa I tēnei kaupapa. Tēnā koe Chris, me Warren, mō tō tautoko I tēnei kaupapa I ngā wā katoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa, ko Murali Baskataku Ingoa, ko Kaihoa Hoa Ahau, mo te Ropu o Boone, o ku Kaimahi Mahi Hoa, Hugh, tēnā koe Hugh, mō tō tautoko. Tēnā koe Steve, mō tō haututanga me tautoko I tēnei kaupapa o te motu o Poutoa. Nō reira, no mātu te maringanui ki te hona atu ki tēnei kaupapa, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. I just wanted to acknowledge the people in the team, and it's a journey that we've taken over the last few months, and it's a concept we're still in the process of developing, so I'll let Kathy talk to it, and we'll come back and explain. Nō reira, tēnā koutou.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors and members of the committee. It is with absolute pleasure that I present this report today. It has taken quite a while to get to the end of the concept design phase, and necessarily so, because there's a lot of people with a long history and association with Te Motu and it's been really important to develop and work through the process of coming forward with what is going to be presented to you today. So in terms of this project, we've had a design working party, representatives of Rangitāne working together, and with our consultant group that we brought together a couple of months ago. In terms of this report, this signals the end of the concept design phase. There are still many other decisions to be taken and made, and this project will evolve even further. But I'd like to take the opportunity now to get the consultant team to run through a presentation with you of the attachment to this report, which is the concept design report. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, and just really what I'd like to do is I got pulled in by Wade and Kathy to working with Grant and Wiramu and the other committee members to do a full review of the current process. I get involved in a large number of facility projects, and I try not to let architects draw until we're very, very clear on what we're trying to do, what the markets are. I can't see merrily as I say that. And to then, given that's the opportunity, then what is the functional brief, and how do we achieve a project which is achievable, sustainable, meets real need, and also opportunity. So that's really the process we've undertaken. And if we just go through the slides, whoever's controlling the... And if we just go to the next one. But the review and development process was fundamentally undertaken from April through to August this year. It was a multidisciplinary team. One of my colleagues is a gentleman called Neil Anderson, who's probably one of the best in Australasia in terms of both a visitor experience and cultural tourism perspective. And Neil and I often work alongside, then working closely with the design team in terms of optimising outcomes. Right back in an April workshop with Wiramu and others, we went right back to basics. What are we trying to achieve with this project? And it was pretty critical, firstly, that it was about partnership. And it was about an authentic partnership between Rangitāne and Palmerston North City Council, and how to work together to achieve great outcomes going forward. Again, Wiremu, Ruma, Chris, Warren and others clearly communicated to the team the importance of the site, and to preserve and care for the site as a cultural heritage site of fundamental importance to both Rangitāne and the city. Identity was very, very important too. It was that it can be a key location where our community can confidently embrace its unique and long history as Rangitāne as a city. Connection and learning, and that's probably got a bit of depth to it. What did that really mean to develop a city marae and cultural centre with a strong focus as a place of gathering and also learning? From an event perspective, obviously optimising what we can achieve in terms of cultural, public and corporate event activity. And then future amenities and services. In other words, how do we actually also provide other activities that actually enhance the whole, whether that's food and beverage offering to retail offering and possibly other tourism offerings going forward. Part of my background, I'm not only, if you like, a facility specialist, but also got a strong funding expertise, and I probably tried to make a preliminary assessment on what could be an envelope that could be achievable and sustainable, and based on what we thought at a very early stage would likely to be the minimum square area and also realistic parameters, we probably settled on about trying to contain ourselves to about a 15 million envelope. But too often you can do a needs process and end up this big, and then it's too hard. And so it's actually trying to actually get it within parameters that can work. Just go to the next slide, please. Equally important was the guiding principles. And I want to just dwell on number one for the moment, that it is a place where the whole community is really comfortable accessing. And obviously testing that with Rangitāne too, that they were very, very comfortable that it's the whole community for the whole community, and that was very much reinforced by everyone. That it's a quality offering that reflects the identity, and it's a must go to. So if families visiting from around New Zealand, that it's actually, you've got to actually head up on site and actually experience the offering. That connectedness and the cultural and marae centre, and also non-duplication. It's not doing what is happening elsewhere in the province or at other facilities and services. And a really strong emphasis from day one as well on operational sustainability. Any museum, arts, cultural heritage can cost a lot of money in terms of net OPEX, and actually how you do that in the smartest possible way and the kind of development that you propose is absolutely critical, that is sustainable. Equally, other important elements, the environmental sustainability, just testing. Often you can try to go to 100%, whereas there's an absolute commitment in terms of environmental sustainability, but whether it's the last 5%, but just actually being really, really smart on that. The cultural and the identity narrative, absolutely integral, and Hugh and Mironi will take that through in terms of how, working closely with Rangitāne, we've really sought to incorporate that in the overall design. And accessibility, this is probably going to get very limited attention today, but it actually was probably one of our big headaches. It's a narrow, constrained site, and just how we do that and actually make it truly accessible to all users was pretty critical. If we could just go to the next slide, please. Just, yep, sorry, didn't work. Okay, just really understanding our audience and markets was pretty critical, and I just want to touch on this relatively quickly, but just I just want to try to give committee members an understanding of the depth of the work that has occurred. We've fundamentally almost focused on 6 different markets. Obviously Rangitāne people, then obviously the Palmerston North and Manawatū, and obviously the resident numbers, which everyone will be well familiar with. Spent a bit of time with CETA, and obviously probably the 3 domestic audiences that are particularly important here what I call the opportunists, visiting friends and relatives, the out and abouters, vacation and leisure, and also the adventurers, vacation and leisure, the international free and independent visitor segment, the whole corporate event activity, and then niche. And when I talk about niche, I think of things like the school curriculum market, for example. But there was considerable work done on that, and in terms of being very, very clear what each was seeking and how that informed the proposition that we developed. Next slide, please. Again, I just want to go wide quickly. There's a large number of failures out there in the world. Probably is no better evidence than with the Millennium projects in the UK, that projects opened, and often the capex spend was too high, the operating model was unsustainable, the expectation of the international market and what could be earned was unrealistic. And particularly if Neil was here, Neil's had a large amount of international experience and probably drawing pretty heavily on the learnings of the Mossman Gorge Cultural Centre with the Aboriginal people there, and just the guided tour and really sort of some smart commercial practices that occur in conjunction of that experience in terms of really quality food and beverage, really quality retail, and they're optimising the visitor spend, but really uniquely communicating in smart ways the heritage and culture of that community. So if we just go to the next one, please. So you're going the wrong way. Product gaps too, just understanding, I just want to highlight a couple of things. Obviously CETA have done some comprehensive work, and I also want to acknowledge CETA. I think some of that, we can often walk into a situation and some of that data is not great. It was fantastic data. But I just want to highlight A and D relevant to what we are trying to do here. But limited mana whenua cultural products when is certainly a product gap and opportunity. I also make the comment in A, it's not about a traditional museum style experience, it's actually how do we do something that is distinctive and authentic that's really going to work. And also in terms of item D, there's limited tour product to offer guided boutique experience for the region, and certainly trying to capitalise on that. Next slide, please. There'd been a 3-year journey and can fully understand what occurred. For those that may have seen previous schemes, there was a vertical lift. It was actually how to get people up on site. You know, when whichever way you look at it, when you're starting to look at vertical lifts, you're probably talking 13, 14 million of odd capex. They're not inexpensive exercises, plus also when you start overlaying OPEX, and it all gets really, really hard when you start to do that. And then really based on that, obviously core feedback from Rangitāne and Council, based on the product gaps, based on the objectives, based on the market, it was making really good sense to look at a Mariah Cultural Centre where it's ultimately could become Palmerston North's popular and best destination. Fantastic view from up on top, and supported with visitor retail, cultural tour experiences, group education programs and corporate civic events. And that's fundamentally where the group landed on regarding the must-dos that we must achieve. Again, my role is to keep stepping back always, and then I was being the cynic and actually could even do it in a smarter way with less spend. And we tried a scaled down version, but really that wasn't even, it's fundamentally we almost do no building, but that wasn't meeting the fundamental objectives of Rangitāne, nor really optimising the visitor experiences of the site. Next slide, please. I just want to highlight this just to try to quickly explain. Just when you looked at the original 53 million model, in terms of meeting market potential and competitor analysis, absolutely tick the boxes. In terms of capital cost achievability, too hard. Operational sustainability, just too much when you look at the hard light of day. The Mariah Cultural Centre proposition, which is what we're advocating today, is really the market potential and competitor analysis, absolutely worked. Capital cost is still challenging, and that's obviously going to be a future debate for Council and Rangitāne. But operational sustainability, again, we got it back and we did some benchmarking very, very favourably compared to similar types of visitor experiences. And if you know Rimmer at all, obviously Rimmer and I spent quite a lot of time together, and he was probably, as a previous hospitality operator, had a hard look at the figures with me and had a comfort that if we get the base right and we get the personnel right, then we've got a real chance of achieving the kind of projections we were talking. And then really in terms of the, if you like, the Steve Bramley, where I was trying to spend very, very little money and achieve great optimal outcomes, just completely died. It wasn't going to meet market potential, wasn't going to meet the competitive analysis opportunities, and yes, lowest cost, but probably operating, we still end up trying to maintain a site with no revenue, and there maybe wasn't really that much in it between C and B when the final analysis. As Kathy has probably explained to me 3 times coming in today, today is not about the money, but I just wanted to give you a feel of the robustness of the process as part of the review and development process to get to the point where the best of Hugh and Merrily then went into overdrive in terms of their design. And so that visitor experience for opening, there's other aspects we looked, like anything you can do it on a stage basis, but obviously the marae for podfooty and core Rangitāne marae activities 7 days a week. Cafe in terms of indoor-outdoor, that is really the go-to with the best view in town, where just you as locals and with any visiting friends and relatives, it's just, you got to go there. We've got to create it as a compelling destination. The retail gallery, giving that a lot of attention, and when the guys take you through it, really trying to do that front of house and actually do that very, very well, because that becomes a critical part of the overall sustainability equation, and also showcasing the best of our talent and cultural products as well. The corporate event activity, you drive that really, really smart. You drive this very, very smartly as a function venue, and also has the flexibility to have overnight stays, whether that's school audiences or corporate audiences. The civic events, really, really valued as part of that whole river network pathway. So again, the whole site, so it can actually just be contiguous in terms of the pathway and the sort of the excellent park experience that can be created alongside the river. Integrated plantings, and the last 2, although they're just the last 2, they're very, very important. How we do digital interpretation of cultural and environmental narratives, which is already some work that's been started to be commissioned, and also very, very critically, the guided tour experiences. And it's about authentic. It's about a Chris, a Daniel, a Warren. They're bringing to life as key guides. I couldn't think of anyone better than Wuremu as in terms of taking my family through and bringing to life the experiences of that site and our history. So the guided tour, absolutely critical. So all those things informed, and as I passed the baton to Hugh and Merrily, that then suggested a functional brief that we could sleep 30 in the wharenui, that we could also sleep 30 in adjacent spaces, so we weren't trying to create a bigger wharenui and starting to just get extra costs we didn't need and use every square metre smartly. Obviously, in terms of ablutions, the retail area, you'll see a significant area there in terms of 200, in terms of the gallery component and retail. Obviously, in terms of the kihini and the cafe, that we're actually just getting economies of scale regarding how we could achieve both, and obviously good area for the cafe area, and then obviously circulation, taking to really the discipline that the team had was staying below 1,000 square metres, and that's fundamentally the design that you'll see shortly. And lastly, because I'm a numbers man, just thought I'd end on this. Karen, I haven't met you, but just sharing in my space and probably your space in terms of just we've crunched everything very, very clearly. We've made very, very clear assumptions on visitor projections. Effectively, it's about 100,000 for the site. This is what that total is showing, what the market breakdown is. Then we've developed every revenue stream and made very, very clear, and Neil and I are both inherently conservative in terms of some of those projections we're making, and obviously that would be in a different forum, but I just want to probably highlight to committee members that there is a high level of robustness regarding the development detail. But as Kathy has said, today is about sharing the concept design and the, if you like, the business case and funding realities is really going to be for a different forum. But I can pass this now to Hugh and Merrily.
O tēnā rā koutou, kia koutou o te mana whenua, o te rohi nei, ko Rangitāne o Manawatū, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Me kia koe Grant, o te rangatira o te tauni nei, me kia koutou katoa o te committee. Kei te mihi, kei te mihi, kei te mihi. Ko Hugh Tennant, toko ingoa, ko te Rōpū Tennant and Brown, ki pōniki. Thank you, Steve. It's really set the scene very well for us to just share with you the ahuatanga, the design that we've been working on in close consultation with Rangitāne. And the site, of course, is familiar to you all, but it has a history. Images on the left with the pre-lopping off the top of the hill. As a history for Rangitāne as a pā site, as a place to retreat to, when other iwi were coming through, and as a, at that stage it would have had a strong archaeological history on it. And then in the 60s, the top 12 metres or so was removed for the embankments for the bridge. And since then we have the car park up there and the use of the site just as a viewing place and a place to hang out for different kinds of things. The geotech is quite an important thing, the bottom right-hand image showing that from the red line, we can't go really within 25 metres of the cliff edge. And there is also a back slope to the valley which has the road running up it. So the site is quite narrow that we have to work with. Steve has explained the brief in terms of that consolidating down to 1,000 square metres and also the uplifting of Rangitāne with the marae and cultural activity of the wharanui and being able to have noho there. At the same time, having quite a substantial cafe and retail offerings for the commercial and public activities on the site. So we were tasked with, we're looking at some different, there was quite a lot of work done in looking at different precedents of this kind of thing, whariwaka and pōniki and other ones overseas and here. And this is where we've arrived at, which was to ensure we had a 60 vehicle car park and able to take buses. The purple line on this image shows that setback that we have to work within for any structure in terms of the geotech safety, in terms of any potential erosion of the cliff edge. And what we've come to is a plan that allows for the continuing use of the pathway along the river's edge, the cliff edge, for those people using the walkway, but also the setting up of a really powerful aotea and wharanui experience for the cultural activity with an orientation in a number of ways, including paths and aspects of the buildings to significant places for Rangitāne on the site. Back to the square here, to Marae o Hine, out to Otanaki Pā and Whareti Maunga, which is over to the northeast, and this path that you can see going sort of vertically up the page, heading to the north, and Ruapehu in the distance. So these geometries, whilst constrained by the setback, were very much informed the design. Just cut to the road. With the road access, we've done a piece of work that the road is quite narrow, and so there's been an analysis done by WSP Traffic that actually the most appropriate way, and it's also a cost-effective way to facilitate the operation of this project up on Te Motu o Pōtua, is to have a series of passing bays which would allow a camper van and a bus to pass. There's about 5 of those, and those, so that you can see there on the image there, this is how the road could be developed in a way that kept the vehicle speed down and allowed for which an appropriate sort of pace for the enjoyment of the journey up to this terminus at the top of Te Motua Potua. This is the plan showing the sort of movement of people, the orange being the movement along the edge of the cliff from east to west and connecting to the pathway of the steps. But then coming around a form that we've created, which is a lookout form, which is a significant aspect, which does a whole lot of things, but coming around that into a tomokanga with a little puhara aspect where the kawa of a pōhiri can be conducted by Rangitāne to this whare, and it can be overlooked or seen from the cafe, but essentially coming onto the Aotea and the Wharenui is at the end of the complex. You can see in the plan, when you come in from the car park, there's a retail gallery, then the cafe, supported by a kitchen that functions both for the cafe and for the wharekai. So that's a good centralised dual focus, which could accommodate a couple of hundred people plus for a kai, if you have both spaces operating. But there's also sliding doors, which means that the cultural activities can be operating and the commercial and public activities of the cafe and gallery can also be operating. Then there's an avenue that looks over the Aotea and out to the view, a hallway past the hui rooms to the entrance into the Wharenui, and mattress and wharepaku. So 2 sets of ablutions for both ends. So it's all been quite carefully worked through with Rangitāne to make that work as a plan. So the entrance experience is one where we come between the curve of the gallery and retail space, and then there's this ramp that goes up and looks out over the Aotea, looks out to the view and gives you that extra bit of height, which helps ameliorate the fact that you're having to sit so far back from the edge. One of the other things about this lookout is it also represents what was there prior, that you're actually up, not as high as the ground would have been, but heading in that direction. So it's almost like an historical expression of the of what was there in terms of the height of water plate. A series of po to be provided by Rangitāne and leading out on this access to the river edge, and then allowing you to come then onto the journey entrance to the, we can be called forward to Tomokanga, there can be a whiro there, Tomokanga, and then through into the Aotea and the marae. On the left being the cafe, and above the lookout ramp. Then coming through, looking back to the Tomokanga and the lookout ramp, and then the now standing at the maho of the Wharenui, and looking at the lookout ramp. And we've created enough containment. This is concept level, but containment of the Aotea, so it has a sense of sanctity and able to be a secure space for the kawa that are performed there. So the overview showing this lacing of paths and the Aotea and the cliff edge. The whare itself of the wharekai, the kitchen and the retail and the cafe is a cost-effective building structure where with PV roofs to power itself, and it works really well in this way because it's a primarily daytime use building. And so what we've done is we've emphasised the cultural aspects and the architectural aspects that really enhance the experience of the visitor, and then have a cost-effective building behind that. Internally, Murali, you might like to talk to this.
Yeah, tēnā koe, Hugh. So in spite of the constraints and all that, we've sort of managed to keep the flexibility of the spaces. So it's quite important to us, reading the brief and discussions with Rangitāne, that they would like to see the various parts of the building operate on their own if needed, or communally. So you could have a formal function happening while you're having people coming into the retail and enjoying a cafe with a cultural experience in the background. So the interior spaces have been done in such a way that as soon as you come in, you get the feeling that you are seeing Rangitāne and the presence of Rangitāne. So the whole idea of whakamana of that site is taken through from the arrival journey through the inside, and we'll make sure that the materiality and the motifs are all developed in conjunction with Rangitāne to ensure that the story and the cultural narrative is taken right through the interior. So whilst we've just shown, these are all indicative, and this concept is still the beginning of our journey in some ways, and we believe that as we continue to develop it with Rangitāne, it will become what we'd call a centre that will whakamana te motu o Pautoa. Identity and culture will be restored. It'll be a new centre for Rangitāne to assert their identity and pride to the wider community to indulge as well. It'll be a unique destination, as Steve pointed out. It's a place where anyone can come and enjoy not just the views, but get a cultural experience. It'll be a place to gather, learn, collaborate, and above all, experience Rangitāne's unique manaakitanga. So on behalf of the design team, I'd like to sort of thank you all for the opportunity to be involved.
Just finishing off here, we've got a fly through hopefully in a second. Just want to talk about kaitiakitanga and the sustainability approaches of the development, where we're looking to be on the right-hand side of sustainable into restorative, and have a regenerative. So we're re-establishing the landscape up there that would have been there in terms of the planting. To have a significant solar array to power the building. We're looking at the water, capturing the rainwater, managing the stormwater, and looking at a net zero carbon and net zero energy. Just go to this, hopefully get this in the centre of the screen. Here we go. We've just got this fly through that. Gives you a little bit of experience of the journey to the entry moment. So this would be the experience if you were coming to attend a pōhiri and be invited onto the marae, or if you were walking along the river edge pathway. You now see the tomokanga and the wharanui behind, and these little puhara on either side of the tomokanga. The tomokanga is such that it can shelter those mana whenua before they come into the atea, to the wharanui. We'll be looking at the existing Rangitāne whare in the area in terms of patterning. We've been working with Warren on how it might be adorned. So these are just very plain at the moment interiors. Showing the wharanui. Coming through into the foyer outside the wharanui and to a hui room, seeing the back of the site, which provides a separate entrance for mana whenua if there's a need, to a sort of boardroom, but also a sleeping space. And walking along the access way, veranda, a smaller meeting room into the wharikai, which has a connection to the nahiri at the back and also out to the view, and then into the cafe, and this can be separated out. And this would be the view experience for someone
casual visitor
coming in to experience the cafe. underneath a entry, a pare, extended pare, into a wind lobby. But already through there, you'll start to see the wharanui, and you're connecting right on this axis to marae o hine. A reception for retail and tours, gallery and retail space. A wharipaku down that corridor there, then the cafe counter. Cafe with connection out to a courtyard that is in the embrace of that walkway ramp, which you can see there. Views out over Hokowhitu, out to Parati, and then the wharikai and the hallway down to the wharanui, then coming outside and taking your coffee outside into the morning sun or the afternoon sun. And then being invited up to the lookout, which would be closed at the times of a pohiri, so that there is a sense of not being overlooked. But walking up this ramp, you're starting to get a different aspect, a different vantage, and a greater view, also being able to see now down to the awa. Haven't quite got the right landscape there, but the limitations of the sculpture. Okay. And then overlooking the Aotea and the wharanui. And you can see then there's these sort of two spaces, one of the public courtyard and the other of the Aotea. Anō reira, o tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
So thank you for bearing with us with that long presentation, but I think it was important to take you through the design process, and happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Kathy, and thanks to the team. It's excellent. So I'll open it up for any questions of members. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. I do have a few questions, just in terms of the process to here and going forward. The paper in 4.3 talks about council's preferred option will be presented to the community as part of the LTP. I'm just wondering how council will determine its preferred option. It looks like there's just one option presented to us here today, but there was a bit of discussion around options A, B and C in the presentation, but those A and C haven't been included in this paper. So I'm just wondering what the view is on how council would determine its preferred option if there's only one presented.
So in terms of 4.3, the preferred option is council's what it wants to go out to the community and consult on. So that is the timing, the funding, the management model, all of those types of things. And so what has been included at the moment in the draft LTP documents is this design concept option with its associated high-level capital and operational funding with an assumption of timing. And what we would be looking for council to give direction through an LTP workshop is around that funding, that timing and that operating model. Now, in terms of how that is determined, that is a matter for the LTP prioritisation process, just like any other project that's coming forward to council.
Okay, thank you. And also, it was mentioned that there's a business case and funding model, and there was a quick screen on there and with some figures, but those haven't been included here. And I think it was suggested that that's for a different forum. Are you suggesting that's for the LTP?
Yes, I am, because this committee doesn't have any terms of reference that cover financial matters, and some of those relate to financial matters. And also we need a general direction from council in terms of the governance, management and operating model before we can complete the modelling of that business plan. So the business plan itself at the moment is incomplete.
Okay, thank you. And also there was a discussion in the presentation about an envelope being determined that was achievable and sustainable, and that was decided that it was to be $15 million and that these were being contained to that. I'm just wondering how the 15 million was determined. How was that decision, how was that amount come to?
So I'll ask Steve to answer that one.
What was key was foremost understanding what we were trying to achieve and what was our smartest way to do it. And whichever way we looked at it, we fundamentally needed a core proposition of about 1,000 square metres. And then equally looking in terms of potential funding sources and net OPEX. You can run different models which have a much, much higher OPEX, which just sinks these kind of projects. So it's actually been really smart about how we did that. And also then, if the CapEx climbs too high, then obviously the ongoing OPEX also gets higher in terms of the asset management cost. And then in terms of, obviously for councillors to discuss, but as a consultant team recommending, if you're trying to achieve the objectives that we started the process on, we probably can't do something meaningful for less than 15 million. And we probably had formed a view, if you like, on how that might be achieved, but that needs to be fully discussed by council. So it was just a reality of what was going to be a viable proposition, and whichever way we shaped it, the reality is that we probably couldn't get it under 15 million, but equally too, we're almost running OPEX in parallel with every functional decision we're making, and again, just trying to be as smart as we could in terms of a sustainable model. But at the end of the day, council will need to determine a level of investment that they're comfortable with this project, and that's really probably needs to be taken, and I understand, Kathy, in that LTP forum.
Okay, thanks. So has there been an OPEX model developed?
Absolutely.
And is that not able to be shared with this committee?
I just think it's which forum that's shared with, so I'll defer to Kathy on that one.
Yeah, councillors, in terms of, there's a number of projects and considerations that are coming forward to the council at the moment at various committees, and it's appropriate that all the information and those projects get considered together and with the financial information, and the LTP workshops are the place for that to occur, so we can get some high-level decisions and then work through with that.
Okay, thank you. And just one further question around, I understand we've got a communities facilities review that I think is coming to us. Do we know whether this sort of space has been identified as a part of that review?
No, it is separate to that review.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Isabella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one from me, and it relates to the upgrade of the road, Cliff Road, and that is outside of the $15 million envelope, that's correct. To what extent does the upgrade of that road correlate to the viability or success of that facility going forward?
I'll comment simply. It's essential. We've got to be able to get coach tours up there, and it does need to be improved. There are 3 different options that are developed. There's probably a mid-level option which Hugh was showing on screen, which was really the smartest way to do it. And again, Kathy, depending on the detail of just when you want to tackle some of that.
So what we've done for the LTP is included that as a program of works. We're making an assumption there we'll get some Waka Kotahi funding for that, but as you're aware, with all transport programs, they've still got to go through a prioritisation program as well. In terms of the the roading upgrade, it has been based on the modelling of the numbers of vehicles, including buses, that we've used to run the operational figures, so the two align.
Thank you. That's very helpful, Mr. Mayor.
Back to you, Councillor Naylor.
Apologies, there was one further question I had, and that relates to the second recommendation is that the committee thank the members of the Design Working Party. Am I correct to assume that the work is complete for this financial year? If we're thinking, does that mean that's finished? Or?
No, not for this financial year, but the work of the Design Working Party is complete, because we've got to the end of the design phase. Work going forward, and the project team will be made up of the people we need as we move into that next phase, which is detailed design. Okay, and I think there was 250,000 allocated to this work through the Better Off funding. For this financial year, is that what we've seen today? Is that what that's been used for, or is that still available for further work? No, that's what that funding has been used for. We haven't quite used all that money, but we have just about used up all of those funds. If council was to proceed with any further designs, we would have to look at additional funding, and one option is to bring forward some of the Better Off funding. When we initially assumed how we would spend that money, council made some assumptions around the years, but there are no restrictions in terms of the funding that we've been given and what year we spend it. Okay, and just going back to those three options, particularly option A and C, which we haven't got in our papers, are those available for us to see if we were interested?
Yes, and potentially as part of the LTP too, for thoroughness, just taking councillors through what we considered there could be really helpful too, subject to your guidance.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you to the team. Thanks, Steve, Murali, Kathy and Hugh. So, councillors, we have the recommendations to committee. One, that the committee note the concept design phase of Te Manawatū Anzac Park Development Project is now complete. Number two, that the committee thank the members of the Te Manawatū Design Working Party and representatives of Rangitāne for their contribution during the concept design phase of the development plan. I'm happy to move that, seconded by my colleague Widdham. If I could just make a couple of comments first. To my council members, I was your representative on the design working group, and I'd have to say this has been a fantastic project to work on. It'd be fair to say, I think Steve summed it up, that we were going down some routes of how to get up there and access and everything without actually dealing with the project, with the options. And it was great that we brought another couple of people to the team, and it sort of it gave us those guiding principles, but also gave us some real discipline about what we were working with. And I think it really solidified all our thinking, and there was many members around the table. Of course, we looked at other projects as well. We looked to our cousins down in Rangitāne, down in Blenheim, and that was an interesting process for us to go and have a look at what they'd done. We also went to Wellington and looked at Whareruaka, and also the expertise that both Hugh and Murray had done in different projects, along with Steve. So, I mean, we've really, I'm trying to tell you, we've overturned every stone that we can to really still get those guiding principles. I mean, I know council members were keen on whole of community access, so it wasn't a closed off site. But it also was around having a quality offering, something that we can all be proud of. You know, arguably, I think this is one of our city's most important projects, creating a cultural centre where we can certainly be really proud of and give mana and status back to the site, because currently it's a car park with some pretty dubious activities carrying on there at times. So it's something that we've got to really aspire to, and I think also reflecting the identity of Rangitāne was really important, and that can't be underestimated. But also that connectedness of the site. It's unique. It has some different characteristics. And then it was really Steve and the team pulled out the operational side of it, the sustainability angle, and I think if you look through the report, it's very, very clear that the sustainability is a really, really big thing of the site. Not just the environmental side of it, but also the cultural narrative of it, the accessibility, and the numbers that have been done around the operational side and the gaps that exist in this part of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and what can be achieved around cultural tourism. I think it's quite exciting. So I'll leave it at that and open it up for any other comments. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, committee. Firstly, I'm definitely going to support the recommendations to note the concept design. Definitely want to thank the concept design committee for all the work goes into it, and listening to my colleagues, I liken this to the existence of all the other council-owned buildings that have been built with the community in mind. To Manawatū, the Globe, the Regent. Whilst we find some comfort in owning and operating those facilities, we should find exactly the same comfort in operating a cultural facility like this. So without any other words, completely support this and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. I'm also really happy to support the recommendations in front of us, to note the design and to thank the members. I think for people like me who like a little bit more detail than what's in the paper, I guess reading through this paper did put up a lot of questions in my mind about how we got to where we are and what the pathway is ahead. And it was useful to get some questions answered around that prior to the meeting and also here today. I think my expectations around what a reserve management plan might look like probably hadn't originally included a 972 square metre building worth maybe 15 million or so. And so I do have a little bit of nervousness around how we might be able to fund that. And as I hear, that's part of another discussion to be had down the track. But I think, and I look forward to seeing the business case where perhaps more of the need for this is perhaps better outlined. And I look forward to seeing a little bit more detail around what the operation model might actually look like. But I certainly love what I saw today. If we could make that happen, I think that would be great. But I do think we've got quite a few steps to go before we could confidently say that we can make that happen. But definitely like to thank those who've put the work in to get it to this point today.
Danielle.
Kia ora. I'd just like to congratulate the team. They've obviously been through a very thorough and robust process. I'm sure it's taken many, many hours, and that's the first time I've actually seen the concepts, and I just think they're absolutely amazing. When I look at it, I think of words like legacy, unique, inclusive and all-encompassing, sustainable, futuristic, enhancing papaoia and value for money. And for me, it will be a taonga that will be enjoyed by everyone in the city, underpinned, of course, by our mana as tangata whenua. So I'm fully supportive and endorsing of it, and I look forward to the next steps and am very excited about where we're going to land. Ngā mihi.
Deputy Mayor.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair, o tira me tūau, ka tika hei whakahoki te mihi ki a koutou, tēnā koe, tēnā koutou, I mihi mai ki a mātou, I te timatatanga o tō koutou kōrero. Nō reira, tēnā nō hoki koutou, matua mahi, whakahirahira, o tira, tēnā nō hoki koutou. Kia ora. I just replied to the mihi that was given to us at the beginning and thanked our guests, our visitors, for the work that they had done in the presentation. I too support what the other councillors have said, particularly Danielle. Must have been a bit telepathic there. But I wanted to note that this project for me is a civic and cultural project, and as such it aims to improve the quality of life of our city, of our community, by promoting cultural and civic activities. It promotes civic engagement and community building, connectedness. I would consider this plan to be an inspirational venture. I think it's wonderful, and I'm pleased where we've landed with this at this moment in time, and I too look forward to what will come beyond. Kia ora koutou.
All right. Well, look, I'll just as a writer reply. I too want to just thank the design team for all the work, because I do know there was a lot of work that had gone in behind the scenes. And I think I just want to repeat too, as Steve and the team have reported, the option is the realistic option, but we can share the other options, which are pretty scary in terms of numbers. But I think it would, but also the option does restore that mana, that identity and status of the site. And also I think it's going to be something of a beacon for our partnership, our JV partnership between the city and Rangitāne. It's something that, you know, everyone should be really, really proud of and be able to show off, actually, in some way. And I think it can only be seen as a really positive thing. Yes, the next part of the process will be, we'll have to go through, and I'm quite confident that the team have done a lot of work in the background to show the robustness of those numbers. As Steve said, he's pretty conservative, and I think the numbers will prove all that as well. All right, so I'll ask you to vote, please. And that's passed. Votes for, none against. Thank you. All right, we'll move through to number 10, which is on our order papers around fostering Māori participation in council decision making. I'll ask Andrew Boyle, our community planning manager, to come forward. 107 of your papers, committee members. Right, and
thank you. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I think this report is a little bit less aspirational and inspirational than the previous two, I'm afraid. And I might just echo David's words. There's a lot of stuff that we do has an underlying legal reason, but there's nearly always, or hopefully always, better reasons to do them. And I think this is one of those cases. So we do need to put in the LTP how council will foster and encourage Māori participation in our decision making. I think the really key thing to note is that that is done in partnership with Rangitāne. So I'll just, you can answer questions now. I'll just say that this report has been to Whare Koku, who endorsed the approach in here.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. I'll open it up for any questions. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Andrew, for the report on behalf of those that have put it together and to Whare Koku. Just a broader question I have sitting in my head. It refers to a sentence under point 2, partnership with Rangitāne. The second sentence or second paragraph. Council involves the wider Māori community in its decision making through this process. So, Andrew, if you're able to clarify, or perhaps my Rangitāne relations. Is that saying that Rangitāne are responsible for council building a relationship with people that are not from Rangitāne?
It's saying that we will build our relationship with the wider Māori community through our partnership with Rangitāne. That the Rangitāne partnership comes first,
Yeah.
and that the wider relationship is based on and within that.
Okay, and sorry to be a stickler. It's the only reason I'm raising it is because this question was posed to Debbie and I in the lead up to our becoming Māori ward councillors, is how are we going to represent the other Māori community in the city?
I can't answer that, I'm afraid.
Can anybody from the committee maybe? No?
I'll get Todd to come up and have a go at that one. Thanks.
Let's get me to the right phrase. I want to take you, where are we? So it'll keep me anchored.
While we're doing that, I'll just ask Chris to comment.
From my understanding, this is a recommendation around council continues to further our engagement as partners with Rangitāne, not necessarily how council is going to ongoingly or further engage with other Māori. So that there, I hope, clarifies the nature of this recommendation today.
Yeah, I think there's a alongside aspect to this, which probably isn't captured by but our responsibilities remain as a council to ensure that engagement does occur across with our wider Māori community as well. And so the Māori ward councillors, as they know, have that responsibility and perform it to a high level. As you reflected, Councillor Fitzgerald, there was a strong clarity from Rangitāne that while you both have connections and leadership in that space, regardless of who is in that role, that there is a primary aspect of, I suppose, both working and engaging in that space, but also ensuring that as staff and as an organisation, that our processes of engagement, and particularly those teams who work very closely in, for example, community development, are working in a way that has integrity, that does reach into the wider Māori community. I was reflecting a little bit on the first report that was presented and the challenges of sort of weaving in whānau ora. And our community development teams have worked very hard, and I think to a great level, in taking those approaches to ensure that that engagement occurs and has credibility from a wider Māori lens. And we do value that Rangitāne do work alongside us to lead that, but we also acknowledge that there's a distinct responsibility we have to be able to ensure that Māori more widely are involved in decision making. As they should be, both from a broader citizenship perspective, but also from a wider treaty perspective, that we have, those of us from outside this rohe do have Indigenous values and perspectives, which are part of what, as a state, we need to represent. So, so some whakaaro. Did you want to add anything? No?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks very much, Andrew, for the report. I just want to get just a view on the correctness of the second last paragraph on page 108, which talks about the two councillors on the Te Puao ward, and then it refers to sit alongside Rangitāne appointees to committees. Is that still appropriate to be included, or is that, have we moved past that point? Was that clear? the other committees at the moment don't have Rangitāne appointees to those committees. So I'm just trying to get some an opinion as to
Tom, just
a view.
flick your microphone on.
I guess that's a matter of for leadership, really. The representation was developed between Rangitāne leadership and the elected members in terms of that discussion, deciding it was of value and would be collectively supported, and which particular committees Rangitāne appointees would be made to. Our assumption as staff is that if there was an aspiration for Rangitāne or for the wider council to add appointees to other committees, or any other adjustments in that space, then it would be, I guess, initially discussed at a leadership level. Staff haven't received feedback from Rangitāne or council that there are any particular additional aspirations for other committees. And certainly if we were made aware of that, it would be a discussion with our chief executive and elected members with Rangitāne leadership. So, any other responses?
Do we have a Rangitāne perspective on that being included in the statement? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Chris.
My understanding was that we had actually set out a roadmap as to which committees over time, over which periods, and that Rangitāne representation would be represented at, knowing that one of my first appointments to a committee was the Environmental and Sustainability Committee, until such a time that we could find somebody with more expertise than myself to be able to take that position on, which was then handed out to Uncle Peter. But that's a very good point, that I do believe there is still an appetite for Rangitāne to be included across other committees, ultimately and eventually also being a part of the full wider council. Kia ora.
Danielle.
Kia, I just think that needs clarifying, because I think it applies to the last term when we actually didn't have any Rangitāne councillors at the City Council. And like Chris said, we were appointed to committees, but now that process has all changed and we now have our Rangitāne councillors. So the way I see it is that bit needs to come out.
Okay, I'll just go to Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and to tautoko, Chris and Danielle, I was just going to say that unfortunately Debbie nor I probably have any more capacity to join every committee, but we'd certainly look to trying to find a way forward where the aspirations at, where we can participate.
And I sense you're going to say something, David.
I just want to clarify to Councillor Hancock's question regarding that sentence at the bottom, second to bottom paragraph on page 108 that talks about held by two councillors that sit alongside Rangitāne appointees to committees and represent specific interests of the wider Māori community. And yes, last term we did have appointees prior to the two councillors, but this committee is an example of where we have the Māori ward councillors and appointees from Rangitāne. So it still does exist, but not as much as what we had last term.
Okay, Councillor Zabellin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been a really useful discussion, and I'm wondering if someone can clarify for me that what the distinction is with the Tupua ward, whether there is a requirement that those councillors are Rangitāne, because I'm wondering whether that's the distinction, that we have Rangitāne appointees that are Rangitāne and representing Rangitāne, but is there perhaps not a requirement that Tupua ward councillors may be Rangitāne, but they're not required to be Rangitāne? So perhaps that's the distinction there, that the Pua ward councillors are perhaps are likely to be Rangitāne, but perhaps not definitely so in the future. That's where that wording, I think, becomes very important. In the future, perhaps we have some wards holding that seat who are from outside the rohe, and then that's when that distinction comes into play. At the moment, our two incumbents sitting in that are Rangitāne, so it's a strong representative base. So I'm wondering if that's where the distinction of the representation of wider Māori communities might come. So I think that maybe that's in the terms of reference, perhaps or something to do with the Pua ward. And whether there is a Rangitāne requirement or whether that's open.
Just to help you answer, and get an answer, I'll get the Deputy Mayor to comment.
Tēnā koe te rangatira, the Chair, and kia ora, my fellow councillor, Councillor Severlin. From my understanding, it wouldn't, just so happened that both Rolly and I are Rangitāne, but it is certainly open for anyone. So yes, you're right. It could be down the track, it could be other people who are different iwi. However, I do want to say that as the Te Pūao ward councillors, we do have an understanding that we are also required to represent the viewpoint or all the wider Māori within our city, and happily so too. Kia ora.
And I'll just come to Wirame.
Just to add on to what you were saying, Debbie, we've all been doing it. We've been doing it for years, so this is nothing new. And our role is to awhi and look after those. But they need to come to see us so we know here to kōrero. It'd be just like someone going to you for a problem in Palmerston North and going down to Levin and asking them what they think. Kia ora.
All right. We've just gone from lots of questions to none. Sorry, the screen was lit up and now you're all turned off. So I gather we've come to. Are there any more questions of the officers? Okay, there isn't. All right, thanks Andrew. Thanks Todd. Before we go to the substantive or the recommendation on screen, I have a change, and it comes from Councillor Fitzgerald. Can I just get Councillor Fitzgerald to read that out?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for a point of clarity, I just wanted to add some clarity to my first question in this paper, which was around is Rangitāne being held out to being responsible for speaking on behalf of Māori that are not from Rangitāne. And my cousin Chris beautifully corrected and did that by saying no, Rangitāne are not. With that in mind, because it's not actually, I don't think it's clear in the report, so I would like to move an amendment to paragraph 3.4 under Māori participation in council decision making. Just read it out. Okay. Page 108 in the papers, item 10. And the Māori participation in council decision making, the 3rd paragraph. Council has committed to its partnership to Rangitāne. In fact, I'll just read what I'm going to replace with because you can all read it there. I'd like to replace the first sentence with the following. Council is committed to its formal partnership with Rangitāne, whilst also committed to building greater participation and engagement with the wider Māori community. One of the reasons that came to mind for me was protecting the mana of Rangitāne by not holding them responsible for the council's role in engaging with Māori that are not of Rangitāne. So, and Deputy Mayor, cousin Debbie, is offered to second that for me as well. Yeah.
Okay, just, we need it back to type it up. Thanks, councillor. Yeah. All right. While we're doing that, just take a moment to reflect on that and we'll get that up on screen. Does anybody else want to speak to that? Mayor.
Mr. Chair, I think without a doubt and unequivocally, we're saying that we value, and it should be in place, the very special relationship that Rangitāne have, or Manawatū have with the council. That's, for me, a given forever. However, we do want to be inclusive of others. We're a big city and, you know, we have other iwi from around. And so, as Pa Wiremu had said, Rangitāne for a very long time have provided manaaki to those people. So we don't want them feeling excluded from being able to come forth. And the vehicle or the mechanism for that is the councillors, Rolly and myself. And hence that's the reason why we're involved in the wider Māori community, in the educational setting, in the health setting, in the social housing setting, and other places. And I would hope that any iwi outside of Rangitāne, if they had any matters that they wanted to raise with council, or just to talk to someone over that outside of council staff, that they would know that they could speak to Rolly or myself. Kia ora.
Thank you. Okay, we've got it up. So we have can I just ask, are you happy to move the first as well? Okay, thank you. Okay, so recommendations to the committee are that committee endorses the draft statement on Māori participation in council decision making for inclusion in the proposed 2024 LTP, and that the committee replace the first sentence of paragraph 3. We should put under heading Māori participation in council decision making. That council is committed to its formal partnership with Rangitāne, while also committed to building greater participation and engagement with the wider Māori community. So that's moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Would anybody else like to, well, first of all, Councillor Fitzgerald, do you need any more? No. Yeah. Is there anybody else wishing to comment? Chris.
Just hey whakaaro for consideration, if we could maybe even just clarify that more, particularly with the language, and call it council is committed to the formal kawinata.
Okay, so where are we going to put that?
I'll change the word partnership to kawinata.
Okay. Is that spelling correct? Capital K. Okay, are we happy with that? Okay, we are. All right, so just repeating, council was committed to the formal kawanata with Rangitāne, while also committed to building greater participation and engagement with the wider Māori community. All right? Great. You don't need to write a reply? No, we're voting. That's passed 8 votes for, none against. Thank you. All right, moving through to number 11, which is Te Whiri Koko Council Engagement with Rangitāne o Manawatū. I'll invite Todd up to speak to that. It's page 111 of your papers. Todd.
Kia ora, I'll leave it mostly as read. This is the second report of this nature because the last scheduled meeting of this committee didn't take place. It covers an extended period, and the intention of the support is to give a genuine lens for the elected members into the work of Te Whiri Koko, which is primarily in operational settings for decisions that have been, or settings that have been approved by council. It was pleasing in going through the meeting notes that these matters, I think, do get to you in the appropriate context for decision making. The intention of this narrative is hopefully to give you a sense of the intent and how some of these kaupapa weave together, because often when they arrive at the council tables, they're in the context of very specific decisions on kaupapa, and sometimes you won't even see necessarily the engagement with Rangitāne within how it's presented, and something we are trying to steer staff towards a little bit more is to kind of complete the loop so that you will hear about the Te Whiri Koko engagement and how Rangitāne's feedback input is reflected in those decisions. So that's my opening kōrero, so tēnā tātou.
Okay, thanks, Todd. So a couple of things from me. So obviously in that community development on page 113, that lists all the projects that have basically been underway or completed. Is that correct?
Yes, yep.
Okay, I'll open it up for any other comments. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Kia ora, tēnā koe, Todd. Thank you for that.
Tēnā koe.
And I think you summed it up beautifully too, Todd, in terms of we often don't see it. And when I read everything that was in this report, I thought, crikey, Te Whiri Koko was involved a lot. So I just want to say thank you to you and my cousins on Te Whiri Koko. Kia ora.
All right. Okay, thank you, Todd. Right, we've got the recommendation to the committee that the committee receives the report titled Te Whiri Koko Council Engagement with Rangitāne o Manawatū, presented to this committee on the 26th of April 23. I'm happy to move that, seconded by my colleague Wiremu. Yeah, look, thanks to the officers, especially you, Todd. I think it has been something that's been missing from an elected member point of view. I know my Rangitāne colleagues are well and truly over this because they participate in it on a regular basis. But even as the Mayor, and I know my other colleagues, council colleagues, don't have a lot of oversight of what's happening here. Not that we need to be in the weeds of this, to be fair, but it is nice to get an understanding. And as Councillor Fitzgerald said, there is a lot of work that goes on. So whether it's around long-term plans, all those community development projects, through to events, waters, parks and reserves, transport facilities, it goes on and on and on. So there's a lot happening there. So it does probably show the depth and breadth of the work that's been carried out. So thanks to everybody involved. So no other comments. We will vote, please. That is passed, 9 votes for, none against. All right, we move through to our final agenda item. It's around the committee work schedule for our for our future meetings. So our October work schedule from the CE, and it's on page 119. And I'm quite happy to move that if there's no commentary or questions of the CE. So it's around the Rangitāne o Manawatū Committee receive its work schedule dated October 2023. I'll move that, seconded by my colleague Wiremu. No questions to that. We will vote, please. And that is passed 8 votes for and none against. Right. I'll now ask you, Wiremu, if you'd like to close the meeting for us.
What a great afternoon it's been. Before you go away, I may say on behalf of Rangitāne, we're looking excitement to what's happening up to Motua Poutua. Nothing else is happening, and it's got such a good viewpoint, and it's a good thing for everyone, not just us, but it's walking together. And I'm glad we beat the Irish. That one was coming. Ino e tātou. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa. Te ata whae tō tātou āriki ehu kraiti, me te araha me te atua, me te whenatahitanga ki te waira tapu, ake amene. On behalf of Rangitāne, have a wonderful weekend. Kia ora.